Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 8 of the Fear and Terror podcast. My name is Aloe, your favorite host. And today, I'm very excited about this episode. We're going to be talking about Post Scrimtum. And I've got some really good guests on today, starting with CrescentSickle,
Hello.
Jumpin Jimmy,
Hey, how are you?
and Mike55.
Hey, guys.
All right, so in this episode, we're going to kind of talk about the new update that came out for Post Scrimtum, and we're also going to share stories that we may have. But let's kind of enter a base question with, how did you get into Post Scrimtum? And anybody can go first.
I guess I'll field this one first. I've been a long time fan of World War II historical games. I started out with Close Combat 2. My mom downloaded a demo of that when I was like 5 or 6 years old. Definitely not appropriate for that age, considering that it was a World War II tactical game. But I've really been fascinated by it. I was a longtime fan of World War II Online. I was a developer for it, a volunteer developer, at the end of 2018 into early 2019, working on a big update for that game. And during that time, there was a lot of talk in that community about like, oh well, Hell Let Loose is coming out. They just announced this other game, Post Scrimtum, that might be coming out too, or something like that. And so we're kind of worried about the state of World War II online. And when Hell Let Loose came out, it seemed like I was still very much on like a realism kick. That's kind of more of the thing that I'm into. And Hell Let Loose, when it came out, a lot of the comments were it's really not. It's a lot more arcadey. It's a lot more Call of Duty. And I have played it since then during one of its free weekends, and I was like, yeah, it's not really what I'm really looking for. But I had gotten into Squad many years ago now, and I learned that Post Scrimtum was built off of what they did for Squad. And so I was like, okay, well, I know Squad at the time was way more into the realism thing. It was much more fresh off of the Project Reality mod. It was like when they were first working on it, and I was like, okay, I'll try Post. I'll see what Post is. And I really just fell in love with it. And I met somebody named Mr. Anarchy, and I knew him from a clan called TAS in PlanetSide 2, the Ascended. And just randomly met him in a pub match one day. We caught back up, and he was part of Fear and Terror. And then I played with people for a while, and then it was like, hey, I'll join, you know. And that was not that long after I got into Post. So yeah, that's how I got into Post. Just I've just been interested in that kind of game. It came out. It has a really good mix of action and realism, and I found a community that helped me want to stay with it, and I'm really happy to do that because it's been a ride, man. It's been very enjoyable.
Definitely a lot of ups and downs in Post Scrimtum, especially in this.
That's true.
So, but I'm glad that the way how far it's come and seeing its progress since playing its progress since the beginning, it's pretty nice. Jimmy, do you want to go next?
Sure. How did I find out about Post Scrimtum? I guess I'll be in line with a lot of people here that I am interested in World War II history as well as history in general, whether that's reading or the movies or, if we all play games, playing all the AAA war game titles and then some of the strategy games as well. But I was introduced to Post Scrimtum by a close personal friend who is also a similar World War II, I'd hesitate to say buff, but interested in World War II history, and we enjoyed, whether it was watching movies or playing the games. He told me about it, and that was right when they announced the game back in early 2018 or late 2017. I'm not exactly sure when that was, but I started playing. I got invited to the closed alpha and then the general alpha before PS was officially released, and played that a decent amount with a small group of friends, including my personal friend. And that's where I met Mr. Anarchy as well, Crescent. It's kind of funny. I knew him from Post Scrimtum and eventually brought him into FaT after talking to him for a little while. And that was just the game we were both playing. I joined FaT late 2018 primarily to play Post Scrimtum with people, just since the initial group I was playing with was people that were just trying it out in the alpha, and then it was released in the beta. Whether you want to call that a rocky release or not, it's up to you. It's not an optimized game, and it wasn't, and it's getting better. But I got tired of trying to play with people when that group was shrinking, so I joined FaT, and that was when Sarge Foster was the PS division lead. And I actually found the clan through the subreddit section up from the Post Scrimtum subreddit, and joined here. Talked with Big Jimmy a lot. I mean, that's when he was still playing Post Scrimtum. We had a small group of people, and then from there, it's kind of just stuck around. I almost left because I was getting pretty fed up. I'm like, I came here to play Post Scrimtum, and that's pretty much it. And you guys aren't even trying, so I'm not going to stick around. And then Sarge Foster stepped down, and I think that's when you took over, Aloe, as the division lead. And that's when I got to know a lot of people here at Chips, Faceless, Turd, Killroom, etc. We go on and on, but yeah, it's still a niche game, but I think it's filling a void that a lot of people want. And I had actually never played Squad before Post Scrimtum. I found Squad from Post Scrimtum, so I can't say it ever hooked me that much, but I mean, I see the parallels, obviously. Yeah, and just interested in the game and World War II history, and this is kind of my realism kick. Yeah, it's been actually very enjoyable. Made a lot of friends through this game and the clan through Post Scrimtum, and then ended up getting heavily into the creative side of things. And Post Scrimtum gave me some content to create, so I started trying to get into that more and more. So that's kind of where we are now. Like you said, it's been a bumpy ride, but I don't think Post Scrimtum's going anywhere for us, regardless of where it stands in the clan scene, both in FaT and outside of it.
And yeah, it's crazy like how many people like Crescent said, he found Anarchy. He met up with Anarchy through PlanetSide, and he was friends with him. PlanetSide, and Anarchy. If you're listening, full circle, man. Everything is full circle. Everything comes back to you. And Mike will probably say your name too. I don't know, Mike. You let us know your story. How did you get involved?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing as these two. Favorite game is a World War II shooter, and I loved Brothers in Arms back in the day, Medal of Honor. I found Post by someone was playing the early beta on YouTube, and I said, well, this is the type of game that's right up my alley that I need. And it's the only game that I really play right now and have ever played in the past year or so. I think the first game that I played, there was an FaT member in the squad. I can't remember who it was. It's either Anarchy or I think it might have been Gray Fox. And after that, I said, well, these guys are fun to play with. And at that moment, I said, all right, I got to join. And since then, it's been great.
And we do have a good group of guys that do play Post. And if you have Post and haven't played it yet, we'll talk about it more. But it's a great game. It's still bumpy. It's still a little bumpy, like we've all said. But it's a really good game. And I feel like once you start playing it, you'll fall in love with it, much like we did. So let's talk a little bit about the Chapter 3 update that came out. For those of you who don't know, the Chapter 3 update was basically D-Day, the Day of Days. Came with 3 maps and several different layers to the map. We have it was Utah, St. Mira Elise, and Carentan Carentan was released the most recently. They were having some problems with it. But let's get everybody's take on the new maps and how they feel about the maps and everything. We'll start with Mike.
Yeah, I definitely like Utah Beach. I think it's the best of the three, at least in my opinion. I think I played Carentan a handful of times. Not a fan of St. Mare, especially in the beginning when they had some problems with the frame rates. But Utah is definitely the best.
I do agree. I like Utah a lot. I feel like it's really, really open. I think that's the only downside I have. But to be fair, a lot of the other maps are really open. It gets very clustered at the beginning, and then it kind of opens up. And I haven't played St. Mare. I've played Carentan. Carentan's all right. The first point and the last 2 points are definitely a pain to play. Crescent, what do you think?
I played all of the maps quite a bit. The only exception being Carentan Invasion, which is the newest layer that came out. And the reason why is because they had an issue with the defenders being able to spawn on the first point, which basically means that the attackers can almost never take it unless they're just purely steamrolling. The other one that I haven't played too much is St. Mariglis Invasion 02. So for history background, there are 2 layers of St. Mariglis. The first one is the night layer, which is when American paratroopers land around St. Mariglis, take out AA guns, and capture the city. And a lot of people that have played the kind of games we play have played the first Call of Duty. You'll remember that because that was in the first Call of Duty. That was the first level. Was St. Mariglis. That's the first layer with Americans paratrooping down. The second layer is the German Fallschirmjäger during the day coming in and trying to retake the town. That's the layer that I haven't played too much of, and I would really like to play more of, because I think the daytime layer is a lot better. The nighttime one has a problem where one of the points is surrounded by really open fields for like a kilometer. And if you're the allies trying to take that, it's really difficult. You have like 2 avenues of attack unless you come from the enemy main, and it can be pretty rough on that last point. The daytime layer, instead of going north to south like the nighttime layer, it goes south to north. The daytime layer goes east to west, and I think that with the map layout is way better. Utah Beach, there's still an issue with public players not really understanding. There's a challenge to be had between getting the time right for the landing, to where people can understand what is expected of them, which is to destroy some objectives on the beach, so that tanks can roll up and then they take a beachhead, and then they're able to spawn on the beach and it's a landing craft, that kind of thing. It's a challenge to balance that first timer so that it's balanced for both public players, figuring out what they have to do and knowing what they have to do and what the best approach is, as opposed to clan players, which are much more experienced with the game, because clan players can knock those out with almost no difficulty. But I've seen many matches stall out when just there's not enough organization on the other side to be able to knock out those first objectives. So I think there's still a little bit of balance issue to handle there. Carentan, I think, is the best map of the 3, unless you play Armor. If you play Armor, it is the second worst. The worst is St. Mariglis, because Bocage Country is very true. Armor is basically useless on St. Mare, at least on the nighttime. I don't know about daytime. But Carentan's very similar. You have the city streets, and there's almost no maneuverability outside of the city, and playing armor in the city is it's scary.
It's like the knot. It's a lot like the
Yeah,
knot.
yeah, it's a lot. Well, Donut has way more room for you to be able to maneuver because there's still that terrain is still like a lot of sloping hills. It's not like impassable bushes.
Yeah.
But so those are my opinions on the maps. The in general, I like a lot of the things that they've been putting out recently because they've also added some changes like the radio link can refresh the rally. Um, they've changed um, the recoil on a lot of the MGs, so it's a lot harder to hip fire with them, which is better for balance. It makes people want to shy more away from the heavy MGs with a lot of recoil towards the lighter MGs because they're a lot more manageable. Um, so yeah, and I'm looking for more of those really high quality changes, and I'm really excited for some of the stuff that they say that they're adding from community contributions. So it's been a rough update, not as rough as Chapter Two. Chapter Two was pretty difficult, um, but I think that this update in general is pretty solid, and I'm pretty excited to see what more they do.
I definitely like seeing the Trello list that they have of ideas that have been thrown at them, from taking down rallies with shovels to dragging. It'll be definitely interesting to see what they implement and what they don't implement. So Jimmy, what are your thoughts?
Chapter 3 maps. So Chapter 3 kind of landed at a time where the personal life got in the way for me at the beginning. And I would say that Chapter 3 had equally as a rough launch as Chapter 2, but it also was one of their most successful launches in the context of visibility and player counts. I mean, you're going to do any kind of D-Day map set or campaign, you're going to get people that don't care a lot about World War II, but they know what D-Day is. They're going to play the game or at least try it. So that was definitely a good thing, I think, for them, since it is a small game and a small developer team. And even though Chapter 2, Fall Guild Plan 1, whatever, the Manstein French invasion maps was a relatively niche theater for a game 2 feature, which I thought was really cool. And I thought a lot of people in the community wanted them to continue with that smaller theater approach. While I was kind of one of those, at the same time, I understood why they were trying to get a more well-known theater into the game. It's going to increase player counts. People know what it is. They're going to have nostalgia playing the older video games that they played when they're growing up, etc. Out of the maps, I would say St. Mary Glee's Daytime is actually my favorite. I've played that more than the others, but it's actually been the most enjoyable, and it's made me step away from my biases towards playing in an armored division. That's pretty much all I wanted to do when I started Post Scriptum, and that's why I got into it too with my friend. We were both really interested in armored combat and tanks, what have you. And that was a really rewarding experience, especially through Chapter 1, all the wide open maps in Operation Market Garden. Like, playing as a tank crew was tons of fun. It required coordination with 3 other friends in the squad, controlling all different parts of the vehicle you're in, and it led to some real stressful but also some real rewarding experiences. And as Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 came out, I kind of had to step away from that, because outside of a handful of maps, they weren't really armor focused. They're armor focused in the sense that they're still armor and you can play armor and have a good time, especially one of the Chapter 2 maps, which is escaping my mind right now. But Chapter 3, definitely, I've barely played armor and have had to do infantry. And I've really enjoyed infantry on St. Mary Glee's Daytime. Nighttime, it's cool. I like how they've added on all these maps, kind of a more, whether you want to call it scripted or not, but events that happen in the game, whether that's parachuting in and St. Mary Glee's at night, or the landings. They have some scripted events with explosions and flak guns, and that's been really helpful, actually, to make it seem like a bunch of shit is going on and kind of immerses you. But I'd say Utah Beach is my least favorite, actually, mainly because I've enjoyed Post Scriptum's the fighting style inland and armored engagements. Don't get me wrong, like landing on the beach is pretty fun, but it does come down to that problem that Crescent kind of touched on with public players or new players not really understanding how to time their attacks or focus on certain objectives. And I mean, you can argue that that's a problem in most of the games like Post Scriptum or Squad or Hell Let Loose. Maybe Hell Let Loose not so much, but the team-oriented gameplay, it's not a hand-holding game. They're not going to put stuff on your map for you. It's up to the players to really direct the players around them. And if that's not happening, it's going to be hard. So the game itself it's not a immediate reward, really straight up jump on a quick game and get some kills. You kind of got to invest some time in it, and you got to have at least a subset of people that are willing to communicate when playing the game for it to be fun. And luckily, when I started playing Post Scriptum in the early alpha, like everyone there knew what they were getting into, so everyone wanted to talk, and we had a lot of fun doing that. Everyone learning the phonetic alphabet for the first time and calling out shit on their map, even if it was a little over to the top. But I mean, that was fun. But it's not like jumping into a team deathmatch. And so some people jump in and they're expecting like, oh, I'm really looking forward to playing a World War II shooter. And then they realize that there is some overhead and there's a barrier to entry to this game that isn't a negative. It's not a drawback. It's not a quick jump into a game and play. You got to find the right people to play with, and you got to be patient, and you can't run and gun too much. I mean, some people are just good enough to do that anyway, but it rewards thinking and slow movements and patience and not quick shooting. So that can be frustrating for some people. And I found that even on the new really popular D-Day maps, like they didn't leave that philosophy behind. It's still very hard. I mean, I've been in several matches on Utah Beach. They don't get off the beach. And I was in the play testing for months for that. And as bad as it was in playtesting, it's much better now in terms of balance and the ability for allies to get off the beach, but it's still a hard game. So that's the only thing that, regardless of the maps, it's the people you play with that makes a big difference. And that's why I joined this clan, because I want to play with people consistently and try to build communication strategies and stuff. And I'm not talking like sitting in there like armchair general stuff. I'm just talking about basic communication. You can't get by without a mic in this game.
Yeah.
And so, but to stay on topic of favorite maps, I'd say the daytime St. Mary Glees is really fun. Carentan is great. I still have some small micro stuttering issues, but other than that, the game runs very well for me, actually. And I mean, I have a upper end PC, so that kind of makes it hard for some people to approach. If you have a low end PC, it's not an optimized game. It's a small developer team, and you're going to run into actually a lot of hiccups if you don't sit there and tweak some stuff. But overall, the maps have been good. Chapter 3 was a staggered release. Carentan wasn't out there initially. They had to wait because performance problems, and then St. Mary Glees had a lot of issues. And I mean, Utah Beach was okay, but it was still a hard map to play on even a powerful rig. I'd say today, though, a lot of the glaring issues have been ironed out. But I mean, hopefully they just keep improving the quality of life in both mechanics and graphics optimization. But yeah, I would say Utah is my least favorite to go against the grain here, but it's still fun. I've always enjoyed doing it. I'd say it's pretty boring to actually be on the German side because you can sit there and wait for the team if they're organized. If they're organized, it's fun to be on both sides. But being the allies on that map is fun. And I would say both others are a lot of fun on both sides.
I think with the Utah Beach map, even if you have an organized allied team, it's still very hard. You could have the worst German team on that map, and it's still really hard to get off the beach, just because you have those few good players on the German team that are holding back the whole entire American team. And it doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be a squad full of decent players, and the rest of the team is relatively bad. And you're still going to get held up. I don't know if they fixed it, but I remember playing when they were doing the tests for the Utah beach, how the Germans could go on the beach and just sabotage everything for the Allies. I don't know if they fixed that.
Yeah,
I know they kept pushing back the limit where you could go. And I know I was still complaining about like, hey, like they're still on the beach. Like it's still kind of, fucked up that they're still on the beach because realistically it doesn't happen, but not everybody follows realistic. So, I mean, it's a very boring side if you're on the Germans, in my opinion. Relatively, if you have a good American team or a good German team or both, or neither, it's going to be boring. So, just because how much space there is, and I mean, you can try to flank every other way on the American team and still get pushed back into the ocean. So, but that's my thought on the Utah is just it's a very rough map, and there's still some things that could probably be balanced, but it's rough.
Two things that I wanted to interject real quick. The first one is a shout out to Danacles, who hasn't been with us for all that long. And the reason why is because I've seen him in multiple games now in Utah on the Allies, where he has taken out all 3 objectives, regardless of whether he has any support. He just goes, blows it up, goes down the beach, blows up another one, dies, respawns, gets the 3rd one. And I've seen him do it multiple times now. He's really good at it. Okay. The second thing is something that Jimmy said that jogged my brain, that goes back to the first question of how did you get into Post Scrimtum, because I actually now vividly remember what it was. Even though, so I didn't know that Post Scrimtum was from Squad until I saw a video by the Mighty Jingles on when Armor Mode released. Before that, I had heard about kind of the rocky launch and some of the issues with Post Scrimtum. And so that turned me off on it. I'm remembering this now. But I watched that video by the Mighty Jingles on the Armor Mode, and I was like, I want that. I want that in my life. Just people in tanks, multi-crewing tanks, organized and cooperating and trying to take out enemy tanks. I want that. I want that so much. And I also, that's when I noticed the similarities of Squad and found out that it wasn't a ripoff. It was actually just being developed on that same. The engine is Unreal Tournament, but Offworld is the one that built their foundation on top of Unreal Engine, and that was what Post Scrimtum was using. So yeah, the armor mode, I wish more people played it, because I love playing armor in this game. It's one of the most exciting. Like, I could be a hull gunner, I could be the commander where I don't even shoot things, and it's exciting as hell to play. I've not played another game that gives you that feeling, and I was playing with someone recently, I think it was Turd, who was like, I can literally not have a gun and not be able to shoot at anything. I'm the commander in a tank, and I just love every minute of it. There's no other game like it, and I wholeheartedly agree with them.
Yeah, that's been definitely the strong point for me, is armor. And even though I said I've been departing from that a little bit due to the map layout, not because they don't want you to play armor, just I'm not necessarily having as much of a good time in inner city fighting, because it is hard. And the new, allied tanks are all open top tank destroyers. But it's, yeah, the armored combat, even with or without the armored game mode, which I remember when that came out and I was really pumped, and I haven't even played it that much. It also comes down to which servers are going to actually host that game type, which, a lot will not. But I was excited about that as well. Like, when all I was doing was playing armor with my friends through the alpha and through the beta and then through the official release. And that was the most rewarding thing, whether it was sitting in the command seat and directing and spotting, or driving and gunning. They all have their responsibilities, and they can each be stressful. I would argue that the hull gunner's the most boring out of all the spots, but that's if you're going to say that it's boring at all. Like, it's the least interactive, but it can still be pretty damn crazy. You have your role to play, and it's fun. So it comes down again to the same problem or benefit of having people to play with and communicate. You can't run a tank without anybody talking. You got to have,
No.
that's like one of the major points of the game. It manifests itself very clearly in Armored. You have to be able to talk, because you almost are blind in that thing. Like, it made me really think about how much it must really suck to be, at least then, in a tank. Like, you can't see anything. You all have to have eyes on something and be communicating well, and to have a kind of a chain of command. And that was actually really rewarding. Sounds like it'd be like, oh, I don't want to get home from work and play that. I want to relax, but it's actually a ton of fun and rewarding if you've got the right people around you. And that has been one thing that's stayed pretty constant through this game, is that has been a rewarding experience. I mean, I was never really great at first-person shooters. I played a ton of them, but that aspect I could get on board with, and I got good at it. They've made some changes for better and some that I don't understand, but just mechanics. But I agree with what they're doing with it, and I hope they continue to focus on armor and making it an enjoyable experience. And hopefully they add some layers that are a little more friendly to armor in Chapter 3. And maybe I'm just missing, I haven't played a good match in those, but everywhere else, man, I've really enjoyed armor. And I mean, there's not really a map I have a strong distaste for at all. I mean, sometimes you get a little tired of, Operation Market Garden Bridges, but that's just what it is. But yeah, I mean, I think if anyone's going to get into this game, it's anyone that has any kind of interest in tank warfare. Like, this is a game to play. I think it's way better than squads. It's way more demanding, and you have to rely on teammates in that way more than you would in an Abrams or any of the modern tanks in squad. So that's really the reason I keep coming back to this game, is that. And the new maps look great. I'd say the new maps are really good looking, and if they get all the performance hiccups ironed out, like, it's a great looking game. People can compare it to these AAA titles, which is much different, and you can find nuanced issues. But I look at some of the videos and the screenshots and just playing it, and it looks amazing. And obviously you need a computer that can handle it, but hopefully this small dev team continues to chip away at performance and responding to community feedback, quality of life. It will continue to be a fun game. I just hope that the dev team doesn't get burnt out or anything. I don't think they are. That's not in any way saying that they are getting burnt out, but I think it's great to see that they have through the Periscope feedback Trello board. That's interesting, and I'm glad to see that, because that was one of the biggest issues they had at the beginning, is like, so what are they doing over there? Like, they kind of didn't have a PR, community-facing communication for a long time. You just waited for the next update, and they've definitely improved on that front. So,
and I kind of want to add on to what Crescent said with the radio, the update with the radio, where the radio men can, refresh rally instead of the squad leader. I mean, squad leaders could still do it, but as someone who has 650 hours and 600 of those hours basically squad leading, it definitely is very helpful for the radio men to, be
It's
responsible
so
for the
nice.
rally, because there are times where I've been in firefights and completely forget about the rally, and the rally's at 30 seconds, and the radio man's 200 meters away, and I can't get to him because we're in a firefight. And I love squad leading, but at the same time, squad leading, it's much like tank warfare. You have to focus. Unless it's a really, really slow game, you have to focus. Most matches on like Best and on Grave will require full attention, because it's just one of those maps where everything is constantly moving. It's like a well-oiled machine. There's stuff that's always happening, especially towards the first point on Best, which is AA bunker, and then the last 2 points, which is usually bridge and farm, I believe. But it's a very, very tedious job, and you definitely have to keep on your toes. And I'm glad that they added that, where the radio men can, take at least one duty away from the squad leader. So I definitely like that. One thing that I have noticed is there are 3 maps that came out with Chapter 3. With Chapter 2, there were only 2 maps that came out. Do you guys think that they'll be adding another map or two to Chapter 2?
It's so Chapter 2 has always meant to come out with 3 maps. None of us really know the reason, as far as I'm aware, for why. And when I say none of us, I don't just mean the people in the podcast. I mean the Post Scriptum community in general. None of us really know why the third map for Chapter 2 hasn't come out yet. For context to those who are listening who aren't that aware of Post Scriptum development, Post Scriptum had to go through an engine update that broke a whole ton of stuff in the game. And there was a long period of time where there was really nothing, no new content, no new patches. It was just the same Chapter 1 stuff over and over and over again. And that started to affect the player counts into September of 2019. And apparently Squad went through something very similar when Offworld had to do the Unreal Engine update as well. But during that time, their art team was really busy working on the Chapter 2 map, so that pretty much right after all the engine upgrades were done, they were able to get release Chapter 2 very quickly after that. And then Chapter 3 relatively very quickly after that. Chapter 2 was January. Chapter 3 was May. I think. I'm reasonably sure that might have been the end of April, but I think it was May. And Chapter 2 was always supposed to have 3 maps, so thinking that they would have the art team would have worked on those 3 maps. But all we got was Stawn and Denant. And I'm not sure if they ever even teased anything for the 3rd map. So there's a lot of mystery surrounding that 3rd map and what it could be. But all their marketing stuff, everything that they put out says that there are 3 maps for Chapter 2. We're only getting 2 right now. The 3rd Chapter 2 map is on the way at some time. So maybe there's a ton of issues with it. Maybe it was largely incomplete. Maybe some of the feedback they got on the other 2 Chapter 2 maps made them rethink maybe where it should be or how it should be designed or that kind of thing. But I think the reason why Chapter 3 came out before the 3rd map is because Chapter 2 had like I said, Post Scriptum was kind of struggling at the end of 2019. Just because there hadn't been content updates. There was nothing really fresh about it. People were kind of getting a little bit burnt out on it. The release of Chapter 2 saw a big spike of activity, but a lot of people didn't keep playing because it was so rocky. There also wasn't a free weekend. There wasn't a half-off sale. I think there was a slight discount, that kind of thing. But both of those maps were really rough. There were a lot of things they added in there that were really nice. The maps looked nice. A lot of the buildings had true interiors, not like the Chapter 1 maps where buildings are just empty boxes, basically. They had real interiors, very cool to see. But there was a lot of performance issues. There's a lot of balance issues with the placement of some of the points. And some of the maps, Denant especially, is very complicated. There's a whole underground tunnel system that, to new players, they have no idea. A lot of new players were confused on how to even play Denant because the Citadel had an underground entrance, an entrance off to the side, and then an entrance in the front facing the German main. And players are trying to get in there, and they're like, how the hell do I get into this thing? This giant fortress on a hill. I don't understand how to get there. And that was kind of a problem. And because that wasn't as well received as maybe as they were hoping, like I said, there was a huge player spike, but not a lot of sustained people playing it. That's why I think they had to turn around and push Chapter 3 very quickly. because pushing Chapter 3 would get a lot more people really excited because it's a very familiar theater. So that's going to bring in, like Jimmy said, I think it was Jimmy that said it. Basically, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. If there's a D-Day beach map, like you want to play the game, regardless if you even have that much interest in World War II history. So they push that to get a lot more interest and a lot more popularity in the game, more cash flow for the company because making games is a business. And I think that's why they push Chapter 3 so much. I do think we're still going to get that third map for Chapter 2. They did promise it to us. They've never said anything different. In their news releases, they're like, we know that the third Chapter 2 map isn't come out yet, but we're still working on it. I just think that they had to push out Chapter 3 and then continue working on Chapter 3 to make it solid, more balanced, more polished, better performance. And now that that is winding down, here within the next month, I think we'll be seeing, if it doesn't release the third Chapter 2 map, then possibly at least some teasers on what it would be.
So with Chapter 3 out, I know they're working on, polishing the game a little bit more. But do you guys think that there'll be a Chapter 4? And if so, what would we'll start with Mike.
I don't think there's going to be a Chapter 4, at least not for a while. I know they talked about after Chapter 3 starting to develop kits, so you could make your own developer kit, or you could kind of make your own game mod if you wanted to. I think that's probably where they're going to go next, and not really release any Chapter 4. I know the lead developer said about 3 months ago or so that they are going to release a third map for Chapter 2, but since then he's really been quiet on when it's going to come out.
Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, all we have to go off is what they provide on their roadmap or their Discord. And Chapter 2's third map is definitely on the roadmap, and it has a very small sliver of a screenshot of that map. As Crescent said, it hasn't gone much more than that, but I would imagine that there's not going to be a Chapter 4. There is going to be a Chapter 2 map 3, and I bet that the schedules have shifted enough lately just due to what they've learned in releasing Chapter 2 and releasing Chapter 3 and doing the performance improvements that were needed. Like, it was needed before even Chapter 2 came out. So, like, that's still a big priority because people aren't going to play the game if it can't run well on the average computer. You can't expect people to have these very powerful machines to run it at basic settings. Like, it has to be an accommodating game. Even if the game itself is a little bit ruthless in terms of how you play the game, it has to at least perform. So I think what they've learned on these new maps, whether it's design and the assets and optimizing those assets and making it playable, they probably have a Chapter 2 third map already designed and what they want it to be, but they probably have to go back and kind of restructure it from the inside out. Might not look different to us at the end result, but I feel like that they've learned a lot. I mean, I would imagine that these releases have been big learning events for them, and they've had a lot of things that they realize that, oh, the community actually does care about this and doesn't care about XYZ. So I have no doubt that they're going to have that map out. When that happens, who knows? And then what Mike said is an SDK for this game is going to be huge for longevity, like just the modding community and the ability to create your own stuff or have your own game modes and create your own maps. It's going to be big not only for people that want to set up their own events, but just for variety, as well as the creative community that want to create their own montages or images. Like, being able to control that stuff is a big plus, and it keeps the game alive. So I think those come first, or if not right after the Chapter 2's third map, but I don't think a Chapter 4 is on the books, at least for 2020 or even 2021, unless, there's a major influx in their capacity to hire people and divvy out tasks and they get a lot more money. But again, we didn't. I mean, I don't think any of us bought this game thinking I want a really deep, really rich, graphical, and very drawn out storyline. Like, you're joining because of the gameplay, and if the gameplay is good and it runs well, that's why I'm saying that the optimization is pretty important. Then that will keep the game alive for a long time. And then if you open up the doors to the community to create their own content, then that kind of relieves the burden of them having to produce content, and they can focus on quality of life and performance, stuff like that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I saw like a Russian. Someone was already producing like a Russian mod. For
I mean, there's been a
Post
lot of modders in the community Discord, like learning Unreal Engine and all the tools available to the generic Unreal Engine, development kit, producing assets. So I won't be surprised if once they open their SDK, that those people kind of be hot on the heels of that and create some new content. I've seen a decent amount, both of an African campaign and some Italian campaigns. But again, none of that can happen unless they have the SDK and that the game is accepting of assets to their parameters. These people are designing things with best guesses and estimates in mind to how PostScriptum expects them to manifest themselves in the game. So until that SDK is out and the sandbox is kind of open, that those things won't happen. But I think that's on their all that's on their roadmap right now is the SDK and sandbox stuff, and then the Chapter 2 map. And that's all coupled with general improvements and quality of life things, which now looks like they're taking pretty seriously. If they're going to open up that through the Periscope Trello board, they care about quality of life, performance. So I think that's their priority. And then the map, I don't think they can afford. Maybe that's reaching a little bit to release a new map and not have it be ready within the first week of release. Like, it has to be kind of hit the ground. It's a new map.
it's
Go.
be perfect. Yeah. Crescent.
Yeah. Regarding, a chapter 4 kind of thing, I have a lot of the same thoughts as Jimmy on it. But something to keep in mind is that a development team, a lot of people always give a lot of criticism to developers. Like, there's this game-breaking bug that it's ruining the gameplay experience for everything, but they're working on skins and different appearances and this other model for stuff. Why aren't they fixing the game-breaking bug? Why don't they do that? I see that a lot, and what you have to understand in a dev team is that there are multiple teams in the dev team, right? You've got the art team, you've got a design team, you got the actual programmers, people that do a lot of modeling. Then you got the testers, the marketing. You got like the whole package. So while there are optimizations you can do with art, obviously lower polys or modify it so like looks as good as it can with as least as much space taken as possible, or render weight as possible. And so art can work on that, but I think a lot of the issues with the performance right now is on the development side, and I could be completely off here, but that's where I currently feel that the big issue is. So while the development team is working on that, the art and design team can be going back and doing that pass on the third Chapter 2 map. I do think that they're going to go back to that, and they're going to try to make that perfect, try to make it really polished. The other thing that I think is going to happen from here is that they're going to take what they learned with the release of Chapter 2 and what people really liked and didn't like about that. They're going to take what they learned in Chapter 3 and what they really liked and didn't like about that, and they're going to do a pass over the Chapter 1 maps and improve those. That's what I think is going to happen rather than start working on a Chapter 4. I think they're going to improve the Chapter 1 maps and do a pass on those. And again, they would be able to do that because that team is freed up to do that work while other teams are working on other things. So I think that the Chapter 1 maps would be improved, and then they'll do another pass on Chapter 2, and they might do another pass on Chapter 3 by that point. but I think that there would be another map release for Chapter 1, another map release for Chapter 2, and then another map release for Chapter 3 after that. And then if there was a Chapter 4, it would happen after that. And if they did a Chapter 1 map, I would like to probably see Song, because I haven't really seen that in any other game. A Chapter 2 map, I'm honestly not sure. Chapter 3 map, though, if I could have a fourth Chapter 3 map, I would want either one of the beaches from Gold, Juno, or Sword, preferably Juno, or I would take Khan. I would take either of those two, because Juno or Khan, I think, would be amazing. Well, Juno, not necessarily amazing. It would just be, finally, we have a Juno map in a game. That's really unheard of. It's kind of like Point du Hoc in Call of Duty 2, right? There's very few games that feature Point du Hoc. How many people knew about Point du Hoc before playing that game? Juno, I think, would be really big just for the precedent. Khan would be a giant urban, just, if you wanted urban combat, Khan would be the map to play it in, and that would be amazing to see in Post Scrimtum. There would be no urban combat like that in the game. It would be Khan, and that would just be the top dog. And I'd really love to see that. If we went from there to a theoretical Chapter 4 theater, it's really hard to say. They might go niche again. If they go niche, then they might do Greece. They might do Italy or Sicily. It'd be really nice to see North Africa. I know a lot of people are going on about, I want to see, where's the Eastern Front? Where's the Eastern Front? I don't think they go Eastern Front, just because even with Chapter 3, there's a lot of overlap of assets that they've already made, and it's very easy to go from Chapter 1 to Chapter 3 just using what assets are there. But making a Eastern Front, you would have to do what they did with Chapter 2, which is basically create all new things. And that's just going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And they're hopefully not going to have another, oh, well, we need to upgrade the engine for like 6 months, so we can't work on anything else to be able to produce an Eastern Front. So I don't think it would be Eastern Front if they did Chapter 4, but I'm not really sure where they would put a Chapter 4. But I would love to see another Chapter 1 map, another Chapter 2 map, another Chapter 3 map.
Or even if they did like an Eastern Front, I'd like to see, like, not necessarily like the main battles like Stalingrad, but some of the stuff that's kind of towards the south, where like Operation Blue, where Germany kind of advanced to the south a little bit and into what is like the
Ukraine,
Armenia and stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that.
Oh, gotcha.
Just pushing this out to like the oil fields that they have down there. So I'd like to see that. But whatever Post brings, I know that all of us in here will be playing it, and we'll love and hate it at the same time, because there are moments with Post. But I like Post as it is, but I definitely agree that it needs a little bit of polishing. As someone who has kind of a lower end computer, it does need polishing, especially with the newer maps. And it happens with the newer maps. I crash a lot on the newer maps, but it won't stop me from at least trying to play the newer maps. So we'll just kind of see how it goes. But moving on from the kind of the update side, let's talk about some of the memories that we've had. And Mike, I want to start with you, because people may have seen the GIF that I've posted in chat of our favorite streamer now. But do you kind of want to walk me through that whole situation and why we have that GIF and why we use it so often?
It's definitely probably my favorite moment playing Post. So I think we were on Vegal, and we were by the bridge, and like always, Al and myself were pretty much in our own conversation, ragging on each other. And this guy that was apparently streaming on Twitch decides to get involved. He thought Aloe was talking crap to him, but obviously he wasn't paying attention. So he in turn TK's Aloe. I turn around and TK him, and his reaction on his stream is one of the most awkward, cringeworthy moments I've ever seen, and it's fantastic. I mean, just the wiggling he does in his seat just looks like he crapped his pants and he's trying to move it around. I mean, it's just
Don't compare it to that. No, and the flare of his nose too. Dude, that was. I have never been oh, maybe I have intensely team killed like that before, and I'm glad that somebody went onto his Twitch, went to find that moment, and made it into the GIF that we have now.
Yeah.
Because if that would have been a lost moment for forever if we didn't do that, but it was good. Yesterday I was playing with Pox and Ruin and Plague, and we were all kind of and Owl too. We were all kind of running around on what's that map? Drail, and the Germans were having a really hard time crossing any bridge on that map. And they built the pontoon bridge that what I usually go to on the east, and they had a scout car starting to push across it, and I put a mine on the bridge as the scout car was driving across, and I guess he saw me stand up and run away, so he started backing up, but he didn't back up enough in time, and the bridge blew up, and it sank the scout car. And I've never done that in my life, but it felt really, really good. That was really cool. There's a lot of good moments. I think Jimmy and I've had some good moments. I know Jimmy's had some good moments in general. Turd's recorded a lot of his moments, so if you check out the Post Scrimtum chat, Turd always puts his killing spree montages in there. But Jimmy, what about you?
Oh man, I mean, I think all of us in here have put a decent amount of time into Post Scrimtum. I think I'm pushing 750 hours. I mean, maybe some of that was popping, but yeah, I mean, out of recent ones, I haven't. I mean, I've had funny moments like that, or like what the fuck moments, but more of mine have been kind of like really stressful moments, or I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Like they're kind of just like crazy, overwhelming moments in a good way. It's not stressful. Like I have to get off. It was recently. I think it was with you, Crescent. It was Turd and Jackal, and we were in the Tiger 131 on Vagel, or yeah, I think it's Vagel. No, Velmullen, and we pretty much we were the frontline spearhead of that whole team, and we took on. I think we took out 5 armored vehicles, 4 of them being Shermans, and pretty much wiped out all the sections more than once. And it was just my ears were ringing when we were done. Like it was just constant fire, constant just yelling. Like everyone's yelling because we were always in combat. So you're yelling over the MG34s and the fucking Tiger's turret rotating noise and shooting. And it was just insane. Like it was one of the most fun I've had at night. And I think we got on at like 10 o'clock at night my time, so it was late for everybody, and we just kind of went at it. I mean, that's what I go back to is like armor is so fun, and it's just so chaotic, and it requires communication. And we're sitting there literally screaming, but it was intense. And I mean, overall, like I don't share as many funny videos like Turd. That guy just has a lot of moments, like how he one shots people all the time. But I've got a lot of really cool moments, especially in admin cam. I've really enjoyed that. On our servers, just capturing footage. That's been another thing that Post Scrimtum ended up taking more time of mine than I thought it would, is just sitting in a camera view and looking at people and watching shit happen. It's a very, just the design, the sound design of the game and the visuals and all the chaos. It is a very well done game. And I think we play this game for the gameplay and some of the visuals, but oh my God, they got the sound down great. And it just the way the game's structured, like it lends itself to that moment. Like nothing in there is scripted, nothing in there is, part of the environment. It's all player created, and there's some crazy moments. And more than I've gotten in like, big Battlefield games in the past. Like that game is meant to be cinematic, and I found more cinematic moments in this game. And it's an unforgiving. People die in one shot, so you'd think it'd be slower, but there's some shit going on, and I don't know. Too many memories to think of in this game, but most of my best ones have been in tanks or sometimes in infantry. But it's just been and most of those memories have come from having good teammates. So that's why, again, this game can be hard to get into if you're going to join and not talk. Like the fun comes out when you're playing with people that talk, even when it's frustrating or annoying.
Because you can have some good conversations, like running through an open field with like not even engaging in combat, but moving from point to point, like talking with squad mates about random shit. That shit is fun. Like it helps pass the time, and it makes traveling go by a lot faster than it is, just because you're talking with people. Because if it's a squad full of like people that don't have mics or aren't communicating, it can be a rough time, a real rough time. Crescent, what about you?
I have a few. The first, it might have been the first day I was in the clan, or if it wasn't the first day, it was like the first week. I was helping pop the server, and my favorite thing to do was to go around as a sapper and try to find spawns and blow them up. I wanted to find fobs, wanted to find MSPs. I just want to go around and blow up spawns and deny spawns because that's something that I can do, and it's something that really helps the entire side if I'm successful. And I didn't read all of the rules. I had seen them like flashing at the top, like what the seating rules were, but it didn't like really register my brain fully. And I went as a sapper and I found an enemy fob while we were seeding the server. And I was planting it, and I'm like, yes, I found the enemy spawn. This is great. I'm like doing my job. And it places, and I'm looking at it on my screen. And then finally the cogs tick in my brain. Wait a minute. You're not supposed to mess with spawns while you're seeding. And so it blows up, and it kills like, Crescent, what are you doing? And I was like, I forgot. I didn't think about it. I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm making a bad first impression. I'm a huge dumbass. I don't know. And I'm just like kind of like standing there, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. I apologize. And Kill is the commander, and he called down a Stuka. So I start hearing a siren, and I look up, and the Stuka is dropping. Like the bomb is going to physically pancake my body into the ground before it blows up, right? And I just look at it, and I'm just like, I deserve this in all chat. And then it blows up, and I'm just like, I'll probably never forget that moment. That's a really good one. The other one recently, though, that Jimmy talked about with the Tiger, that was another huge one. I was the hull gunner. No, I was the commander, I think. And I kept hopping out to try to stop the enemy from like coming up on the tank. We went like way north of El Molen to do a flank. We ended up taking out an enemy mortar fob like right after they built it. I hopped out and like killed one of the guys that was on the mortar, got back to the tank. But the moment that Jimmy's talking about is we got the tank, and there's infantry like, I'm like trying to call it. There's an MSP behind those bushes. There's like right next to it. There's squads of infantry, like literally squad, not 9 people, not 10 people, but like 20 people going on our left flank, just like right by us, and like throwing smokes and throwing grenades and like trying to take us out. And they're engaging something on the right. And I'm like, there's an MSP on they're all over here on the left. What are you guys doing? And Turd goes, wait, they're on the left too? And I realized, and it's really hard to understand anybody because both the turret coax MG is going off, the hull gun MG is going off, and we're just like trying to hose and HE like everybody around. But the turret was engaging targets to the right, and it turns out that we were like in front of the spawn for the entire enemy team, like their only spawn, so they're all spawning there and going past our tank. And just we got surrounded by infantry, and it was, when you're talking about cinematic moments, I mean, when you're completely surrounded in a tank, and you're not going to get out of that situation because they're going to get anti-tank, they're going to take you out. There's just no way around it. And it's just like, all right, this is our last stand. Like, we're going to try to take out as many of them with us as we can before we go down, because we should never have been in this position. But just MGs going off for like solid minutes and just explosions all around, and everyone's calling out targets over each other because we're surrounded. That was crazy. I really hope someone's got a recording of that, because that was grade A stuff.
We talk about these moments, but I think overall what Post does is, it offers these little moments throughout the game that, I really haven't experienced in other games. And with the fantastic job they've done with the effects and everything, it just makes it just an amazing experience that you would just want to keep coming back for. I mean, one moment you're running through a field with your squad, you hear the artillery in the distance, and all of a sudden you're in it. It's exploding around you. There's MGs that are suppressing you.
There's body
parts flying around you. I mean, it's just a fantastic. And you stop playing the game and you start to think about those moments, and it really draws you back into the game, to keep wanting to play it and live those experiences.
I had a match the other day that I was playing. I have two quick stories. We were playing on Best on our server, and it was like early on before everybody else got on and our server was popped. But there was like, I think I fired 2 clips, and that was it. The rest were like throwing nades on the first point of Best on the AA, and I'd go back to the middle bunker on AA and grab more nades, and then just throw the nades that I had, and then run back, throw more nades, and I got like 9 kills with nades, and I was like, all right, well, I'm cool with that. But like moments like with all the explosions going around and knowing that you're like one of the only, it's like a last hit. Like if you've ever played Post and you have a last stand situation, it's satisfying seeing that like you check your map every once in a while and see that your team's coming, but they're still quite a far way out, and you try and just make the most of the situation that you have by like throwing nades, using everything that you have, whether it's pistol or melee or whatever, and just using what you have just to take out the entire team. And then the sad part being you die when your team finally arrives, which has happened to me plenty of times. But another favorite part is probably when playing with Kilrim, and when he's like radio and I'm squad leading and he has to follow me around. Like it's a bad luck kind of thing. Every time Kilrim's like radio man, he gets me killed. So like scared Kilrim is the best Kilrim. Like shit that happens between Volmolin. We were in Volmolin charging the forest right next to hotel.
Oh,
You're welcome.
it's not my fault you're on the rally.
Very much thanks. Very many
Sickle,
thanks.
run!
I'm out.
Scared Kilrim is my favorite Kilrim.
There's a shitload coming from the
Oh,
south.
God!
Yeah, just keep shooting that way. Suppress them. I did. I'm running towards the tank. Tank.
Oh, no! Oh, my God!
And that happened. That's one of my favorite moments. Definitely the streamer is probably like of most recent. That's probably one of my favorite moments is the streamer team killing me, because like it was just Mike on the other side of the bridge yelling, like whispering to me, and I was like, "What do you want?" And he was like, "Fuck you," and I was like, "Fuck you," and the guy was like, "Hey, you don't need to be so aggressive. Like, you just chill. We're on a team." And I was like, because I was still talking to Mike. I didn't hear this guy. I told Mike, "Fuck you" again, and the guy said, "What?" And I was like, "You fucking heard me." And he killed me. And as soon as he killed me, I yelled at Mike to kill him, and Mike killed him. And then the rest is history. So, but I do appreciate playing with these guys. Like they're good. They listen. And even if they don't listen, they're still really fun to play with. I do have a lot of fun moments, and it's about the moments you create with people, and how serene and beautiful the game is. Like when you're running through an open field or like in the middle of a firefight, it's a beautiful game. Seeing all the explosions and the ambient sounds when you're running through a forest and stuff. But I do appreciate playing with these guys, and we're gonna wrap it up here. I do appreciate everybody else or everybody tuning in, and I appreciate Crescent, Jimmy, and Mike for being on this podcast with me and sharing their stories and opinions and thoughts. And with that said, I think we're good. Thanks for being on, guys.